All right, thank you all so much for joining us today for another edition of Nutrition at Noon. My name is Emily. I'm one of the in-store nutritionists with Giant. Today we're going to be talking about cooking once and eating twice. The presentation today is going to be about 15 minutes. First 10 minutes or so are going to be some of my best tips and strategies for you, and then we'll end with a 5-minute live Q&A. So if you do have any questions over the course of the presentation, please feel free to enter them in the Q&A tab at the bottom of the screen, and we'll get to them at the end. If you're new to webinars, welcome. We're happy to have you with us. Please be assured that your mics and your cameras are off so we can't see or hear you. No matter what you have going on at your homes at this lunchtime hour, we're happy to have you with us. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. So with everything going on right now, we're all spending more time at home than ever, and specifically on the weekends and in the evenings. And I know that I've been spending a lot of this time getting more comfortable in the kitchen, trying new recipes or new methods of cooking, and just generally trying to add some new things to my weekly dinner routine. And that's been really fun for me. I've really enjoyed getting some new recipes on the table and trying new things, but it also can be rather tiring. And sometimes you just want that night off from the kitchen. Now, a traditional night off from the kitchen might mean a restaurant or a takeout meal, but those kinds of foods tend to be a little bit higher in sodium, saturated fat, and added sugar than we would want. So how do we take our desire to have that night off from the kitchen and balance it with not wanting to sacrifice our healthy meals? The answer is cooking once and eating twice. Cooking once and eating twice allows us to take that more time that we have to try new cooking methods or recipes and balance it with our desire for time saving and for ease. It allows us to take our want for healthier meals and including healthy meals in our nightly routine and balance it with wanting to avoid that kitchen and cooking burnout. Cooking once and eating twice can be accomplished in a variety of ways. Kind of the most common way is good old-fashioned standby leftovers or batch cooking. So intentionally making extra servings of a particular meal and leaving them in your kitchen, in your refrigerator, designated for tomorrow night or maybe even the night after that as well. Other ways to accomplish this are freezer meals and makeover meals. And those are the kinds that we're going to talk about today. So freezer meals are already made, totally prepared and cooked meals that you have in your freezer that are ready to go for those nights that you're just tired or don't feel like making a whole ordeal in your kitchen. Before we move on to some of my favorite freezer meal recipes, I want to give you some tips to make this as efficient for you and set you up for as much success as possible. So first of all, when you're freezing meals, you want to make sure that you're freezing them as flat as possible. So if you're using freezer bags or something along those lines, lay your proteins out flat. Don't stack things on top of each other. And the reason for this is twofold. First of all, it's a space saver. If you have flat objects, they'll stack up in your freezer so much easier than if it's a giant frozen cylinder. You'll get a lot more stuff in your same freezer. The second reason is that when it comes time to defrost or thaw your meals, it'll be more even to defrost them if it's on a flat plane rather than if it's in a big chunk. You won't have anything getting too warm before other things, which can lead to food safety issues. So second tip is make sure that you're cooling your foods before you put them in your freezer. So don't take something out of your steaming hot oven and immediately put it in your freezer. The food's really hot and the freezer's really cold, and it'll allow your food to stay in that danger zone where bacteria can grow for too long. So put your food on the countertop or on the stove top, let it come down to close to room temperature, and then go ahead and put it away. My next tip for freezer meals, make sure that you're making extras so that you have freezer meals stocked up. So if you know that you're gonna make a casserole or a lasagna, it might be beneficial to go ahead and just buy double ingredients, make a double batch, and freeze one. That way, even if you don't have a plan to eat it necessarily, you know it's in there for that night when you don't want to make an entire dinner. My last tip for freezer meals, make sure that you are thawing them and defrosting them safely. So food safety is a big thing to me. Make sure that you are bringing it down to cool temperatures over a long period of time so that you're not putting that food in that danger zone. The safest way to defrost your meals, put it in the refrigerator 24 to 48 hours before you're ready to start eating. And that way you'll let the temperature come up slowly and it won't cause any of that bacteria to grow. But if making a freezer meal is a little bit more of a last minute decision for you, no problem. You can still defrost it safely by running it under consistently running cold water. And here I have some examples of how long things can last in your freezer. The good news is that food can last for a really long time in your freezer, which makes it really convenient for us, but it can't last forever. So make sure that you know what's in there, when your food got in your freezer, so you're using it before it gets spoiled or freezer burnt. Things like ground beef and ground meats can last for about 3 to 4 months. Uncooked poultry, maybe 9 months to a year. Soups or stews can last for 2 to 3 months, and that's mostly for quality purposes. And then cooked meats should be eaten within 2 to 6 months. When it comes to freezing, make sure you're using the right tools. Freezer bags are a really convenient way to make sure you're getting an airtight seal, and like I said, it's a space saver. But there's also lots of Tupperware that you can buy at Giant that's airtight. It's going to prevent that freezer burn or that spoilage. So this is one of my favorite recipes that I like to freeze. It's spiced lentil soup. So I'm a soup person. I would eat soup every single day of the year, even in the dead of summer, but I recognize that not everybody is like that. This soup, I got the recipe from Savory online magazine. What I love about it is it's packed with protein and fiber from those lentils. And then it's got an array of colorful vegetables, things like carrots and spinach and tomatoes. So you're really getting a lot of good nutrition in this soup. It can last in your freezer for up to 2 to 3 months. So I always like to have it in there in case there's a cooler day, which we're having right now, or maybe if it's raining or you just need a little bit of a warm bowl of soup. This is another meal that I love to have in my freezer. It's cashew chicken teriyaki. I love Chinese food. My family loves Chinese food. There's nothing more fun to me than Chinese takeout on the weekends. But like I said before, takeout can be much higher in that sodium, saturated fat, added sugar than what we normally want to include in our diet. So next time you're thinking about getting takeout from a restaurant, try taking out this meal from your freezer. It can last for up to 6 months. So the next time you're going for a Friday night movie night, this is the perfect meal to have. I got this recipe from Savory's online magazine as well. And what I love about it is it's got those carrots and those green beans. So it's really giving you that boost of nutrition and vegetables that you wouldn't typically get from a restaurant. So you're getting that comfort meal, but you're getting it healthier and you're getting it with a little less effort. All right, so now I want to talk a little bit about makeover meals. Makeover meals are more than just traditional leftovers. It's taking one component of your meal, one ingredient or one portion of the meal, and completely repurposing it and reinventing it to make it an entirely new meal with no extra effort. So I'm going to show you what I mean by that. But first, let's talk about making a plan. Making a meal plan and planning it out is super important when it comes to makeover meals. One reason is that it helps to prevent food waste. We've all been there where we've opened our refrigerator, looked in the back, saw a leftover and thought, I have absolutely no idea when that got in there. And then we end up throwing it away. Making a plan helps to prevent that food waste so that we know when we're going to use our makeover ingredients. Making a plan also helps to prevent those food safety issues I was talking about. So like I said, foods can last for a really long time in the freezer, but it's a bit of a different story in the refrigerator. For example, cooked chicken can last up to 3 to 4 days in the refrigerator. So if you make chicken on Monday, make sure you have a plan to make it over and get it out of your fridge by Thursday. Lastly, making a plan just makes this easier. We've all been there where maybe our kids or our significant other, maybe even ourselves, is saying, what's for dinner? And maybe we get to 6 o'clock and we're done with work and we think, oh, I have absolutely no idea what's for dinner. Making a plan helps to make sure that you know what you're going to put on the table right when you're done with your work. This is one of my favorite makeover meal ideas. Stuffed peppers are basically a weekly staple in my house. I love to stuff them with lean ground beef or ground turkey. I even like to put carrots, mushrooms, and zucchini in my stuffing to make it a little bit more nutritious. But have you ever noticed that when you make stuffed peppers, the amount of stuffing that you end up making is more than can fit in those peppers? So I like to take the extra stuffing and reinvent it into taco night, stir fry, or even this stuffed pepper soup that I found on Savory. Like I said, if it comes in a broth, I'm gonna eat it. This is 4 completely different meals that satisfy 4 completely different cravings, but only require that one night of cooking. This is another one of my makeover meal ideas, this baked chicken with pepper. This is a lean protein, fiber-rich vegetables. I like to pair it with a whole grain, maybe like brown rice. After dinner, I'll take one of the chickens, shred it up. I can make chicken gyros, I can make chicken salad. Again, 3 totally different meals that satisfy 3 different cravings, but only require that one night of cooking. So let's think about a situation where maybe you want that night off from the kitchen. You don't want to put in all the effort of cooking an entire meal, but you don't have a freezer meal and you don't have quite enough leftovers to make a makeover meal. That's okay. Even if you have some sporadic or random leftovers in your fridge, you can make a balanced meal for very little effort. So say you only have leftover vegetables, maybe carrots or broccoli, no problem. You can pick up a rotisserie chicken from Giant, slice it up, you have an excellent source of lean protein with no extra cooking. Or maybe all you have is the leftover protein, chicken from the night before, or fish, or beef, whatever you have, no problem. Pick up a bagged salad, no cooking, no extra effort, but tons of those fiber-rich vegetables. Or if all you have left over are grains, add some black beans, some frozen vegetables. You can even get the microwavable steam packs, and you have a balanced meal with no extra effort. And if you're looking for more information on how to make these kinds of meals work for you, connect with us at giantfood.com/nutrition. You can connect with one of us nutritionists for a one-on-one personalized virtual consult. We also have online classes and webinars like this daily Nutrition at Noon webinar. Our blog has inspiring recipes and education. And check out our Nutrition Made Easy podcast, which will serve up inspiration no matter what your goals are. And we have a very special challenge going on in the month of May. It's our Healthy at Home Challenge. If you haven't heard of it yet, this is still time to get involved. Every week in May, we have a food and nutrition challenge and a fitness challenge. Right now we're in week 2, so our food challenge is trying a new fruit or vegetable every day, or an old standby in a new way, and getting some physical activity or movement for at least 30 minutes every day. And you can share your successes with us on social media using #HealthyAtHome, #GiantFoodChallenge, and make sure to @GiantFood. And here are some examples of some of the posts that we are already seeing from our team and from the greater community. So if you'd like to be involved, please email us at nutrition@giantfood.com, and we'll be happy to get you started. All right, we have a couple minutes left, so I'm going to see what questions we have here. All right, we have a question here. Are there any particular foods that do not freeze well? So that's a good question. So freezer meals, they're great. They can last for a really long time. The good news is that most foods freeze totally fine. In general, foods that have a really high water content, something like cucumbers, celery, watermelon, they might not freeze as well. They might get a little mushy in the freezer. So that might be something that you wouldn't include in those meals. In addition, egg whites don't necessarily freeze very well. Anything that has a creamy texture will separate in the freezer. But for the most part, foods will really last for quite a long time. See, we have another question. What are some other good examples of freezer meals? So like I said, basically anything can be frozen except for those items that I said might have a little bit more of a tough time. So casseroles are a great freezable item because you can just reheat them. Lasagna is the same way. I actually even like to freeze smoothies. I might make a really big batch of a smoothie, put it in a freezer bag, and let it live in my freezer. And then I can take it out, let it defrost, and either have a smoothie or maybe even make it into an acai bowl or some other type of fruit bowl. Okay, and then we have one more question. How long should you leave a hot meal, for instance, a meatloaf, on the counter before you freeze it? So that's another good question. It's kind of a delicate balance because you don't want to put steaming hot food into your freezer. Like I said, it'll enter that danger zone where bacteria can grow. But you don't want to leave it out too long either because it'll enter the danger zone all on its own. So I would say keep an eye on it. Foods can probably cool down in about an hour or so. If it's close to room temperature, it's safe to go ahead and put in. Don't wait until it gets cold on the counter because then it can enter the danger zone, and we definitely don't want that. So that's all the time we have for today. If you have any more questions, please email us at nutrition@giantfood.com. We'll be happy to answer them. Thanks for joining me today, and we look forward to seeing you tomorrow for another edition of Nutrition at Noon.